Good evening. So, gonna make a quick video about just solving linear equations. So, let's just start off with kind of really the basics, okay? So, let's suppose we have an equation 2x equals 10. Yeah, my computer's going crazy. All right, there we go. Now, the trick with linear equations is always, you've got to eventually get the variable all by itself, so you just have 1x where x equals something, right? So you got to get rid of all the other numbers and things like that. So the trick to know what to do is you just look at what operation connects the x to whatever number you're trying to get rid of. Okay, so in this case, we'll notice this is 2 times x. Since it's multiplication and I'm trying to undo it, I want to do the opposite of that. I want to divide. Now, most folks will go ahead and write this, they'll do like, divided by 2, which is perfectly fine. So then we wind up with 1x on this side, on the left, equals, and then 10 divided by 2, of course, would be 5. If you're doing something else, let's say we have x minus 8 equals 12, okay? So again, what connects the x and the 8 is a subtraction, right? So if I want to get rid of that, then I need to do the opposite. I need to do the inverse operation. So I need to add 8 to both sides of that equation. So just remember, you can do anything you want to an equation as long as you do it to both sides. So this is just going to be an x because the negative 8 plus 8 would be 0. Okay, and then 12 plus 8 would be 20. So those are really the two basic things that you really need to know about how to solve an equation. Just those two things. If you're multiplying stuff, divide it. If you're dividing stuff, you would multiply it, right? I mean, those are inverses of each other. So if we do x divided by 3 equals 5, then since it's dividing by 3, we need to multiply both sides by 3. And then if you multiply and divide by 3, that just gives you 1. So that's going to be x equals 15. Addition and subtraction, same way if you're adding something, you've got to subtract, right? So now let's suppose for a second that we have, more than one thing to worry about. If we got 2x plus 5 equals 9. Now, I'm making these up off the top of my head, so it's not like we're going to have whole numbers all the time and stuff like that, okay? But if you see fractions, don't freak out. It's okay. So we need to get rid of the 2 and the 5, okay? Now, the trick is there's a lot of different ways to do it. And they're both, all ways are perfectly fine. Just remember, as long as you do it to one side, you do it to the other. Don't freak out about what has to be done first or what has to be done second. Okay? In general, it's easier if you think about your order of operations and you go backwards. Okay? So I see multiplication because we have a 2 times an x. I see addition, right? So right here, we have multiplication. And then here we have addition, right? So what that tells me is if I'm thinking about solving my equation, I want to go backwards from the order of operations, so I need to get rid of all this addition stuff first. So I'm adding 5. Well, that just means I need to subtract 5 from both sides. And then my new equivalent equation is going to be 2x equals 4. And now I still have that multiplication to deal with, so we're going to divide by 2. Even if you have fractions, that's okay. Okay? There's a couple of ways that you could tackle these, but just go ahead and add things up and stuff. So same thing, I have multiplication and subtraction. So I'm going to subtract the 1/5. Now 2 minus 1/5, what's that going to be? So let me do kind of some scratch work over here off to the side. So over here, if we do 2 minus 1/5. Now remember, when you're adding, subtracting fractions, you have to have a common denominator, and think about a whole number as being over 1. So my common denominator is going to be 5. I got to multiply the bottom by 5. I do the top as well. So that's going to be 10/5 minus 1/5. Okay, so remember, subtract the numerators, leave the denominator alone. So we're going to have 2/3 equals 9/5. Now, I have 2/3 times 1/2. So that means we want to divide by 2/3. Now, how do we divide by a fraction? Well, we multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3/2. Remember, that's dividing by 2/3. And when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. So 9 times 3 would be 27. 5 times 2 would be 10. And we get x equals 27/10. So don't freak out with fractions. It's exactly the same steps, but a lot of people see them and go, I don't know how to deal with fractions. And I know you can do things like clearing the fractions out and stuff like that, but then you're just adding more steps in, and it's my thought that the more steps you have, the more chances you have to screw something up. Okay? So I tend just to deal with the fractions. Now, what if we have multiple steps? 3x minus 10 equals 5x plus 12. Well, it doesn't matter where you start. I see all kinds of multiplication and I see all kinds of addition, right? So I see multiplication here and I see multiplication here. And I can't spell multiply apparently. And then I've got my subtraction and addition, right? So I want to undo addition, subtraction stuff first. And it doesn't matter which one you do first, okay? So I could add the 10 to both sides or I could subtract the 12. Really doesn't much matter. I'm just going to go ahead and add 10 to both sides. So my new equation will be a 3x on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we'll have 5x plus, well, 12 plus 10 would be 22. Now, I still see addition. Aha! So I've got to deal with that. Now, I could subtract 22 from both sides, but that's not going to do me a whole lot of good. Well, watch what happens. And it's fine if you did, okay? But I can't combine the 3x and the 22. So I would just wind up with something just as complicated, right? I still have some subtraction running around. So ideally, what you want to look for then is like terms when you're adding and subtracting things. Okay? So since I have an x on this side and it's all by itself, I want to look on the right-hand side and say, oh, look, we're adding these two terms. We have this x over here. Let's subtract the like terms. So 3 minus 5x would be a negative 2x. And then on the right-hand side, the 5x minus 5x is 0. So that just leaves us with a 22. Now we have a negative 2 times x. So I want to divide by a negative 2. If I divide by the negative 2, we get 1x. 22 divided by 2 would be negative 11. Now, some equations have a lot more things going on one side, so you might have something like 4x minus 2 times 3x plus 1 equals 2 plus x minus, let's do a 3 here, x minus 2. Okay, so if you got lots of stuff going on, the first thing that you need to do is simplify the expressions on either side of the equal sign, okay? So right now, I'm just going to focus on just the left-hand side, and I want to simplify that. So I can distribute this 2, okay? Now, worst case scenario, what I want to do is get it down to where there's only 2 terms on each side. So if I distribute that 2, we get negative 6x minus 2. Now I see I have like terms. I've got the 4x minus the 6x. I can combine those since they're like terms. So 4 minus 6 would be negative 2x minus 2. Now notice, I wasn't trying to do things to both sides of the equation and move stuff around or whatever. I'm just simply focusing on one side of the equation here. Pretend it's just an expression. Use your distributive property, combine your like terms. Those are the only two things that you really have to worry about, okay, until you get it down to two terms. So just treat that as an expression. Now, same thing, treat this as an expression all by itself. So what can I do? I can distribute the 3. So that gives me 2 plus 3x minus 6. I do have some like terms here because I got the 2 and the minus 6. 2 minus 6 would be negative 4 plus a 3x. Okay, now that there's nothing I can do on either side of the equation, now I need to think about the solving part of it. Okay, so there's really two different things going on. One, we're simplifying expressions, and we're going to get them as simple as possible because that makes the equation solving easier. Once we do that, then we solve the equations. So now that I'm on the equation solving part, let me get rid of this stuff. We can say, well, I've got some addition, subtraction things again. So let me go ahead and I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And just make sure that you combine, the like terms. So that's a negative 2x equals negative 2 plus 3x. Then what? We got this addition over here. I know if I add the 2, it's not going to do me any good because I can't combine it with the 2x, but I can combine the 3x. So since that's addition, we need to subtract. Subtract from both sides. That gives me negative 5x equals negative 2. Okay. Now, I have just that one term with x's running around now. So that tells me I need to divide by the negative 5 because that's negative 5 times x. So to undo that, we divide. And let's see. So that's x on this side. And the only thing I can do is negative divided by negative is a positive. So that's going to be a positive 2/5. Okay. So when you have multiple steps involved, just remember to simplify things first, then worry about the equation solving stuff where you're moving things from one side to the other and things like that.